In early 2024, a dangerous alliance was formed between one of Colombia's most ruthless cartels and a powerful Bulgarian crime syndicate. This deal involved drug shipments worth over 1 billion rands. That's roughly about 50 million US dollars. But to bridge the gap between continents, they needed a man they could trust. That man was Peter Jaggers. However, what they didn't know was that they were about to get messed with and betrayed by the so-called trusted man. For years, Jaggers, the leader of the notorious Terrible Josters gang, had been the perfect middleman. His role was simple: receive the coordinates of drug shipments, ensure their safe collection, and guarantee delivery to the Bulgarian crime syndicates. A perfect system that had made everyone involved very, very rich. But this time, something had shifted inside him. Perhaps it was the constant sight of riches flowing through his fingers, or maybe it was simple greed. Whatever the reason, Jaggers had grown tired of being just another piece on someone else's chessboard. So he crafted a plan, one that he believed would set him up for life. Instead of facilitating the handoff between the Colombians and Bulgarians, he would take everything for himself. It seemed perfect in theory, but Jaggers had made a fatal miscalculation. He wasn't just stealing drugs, he was betraying two of the most merciless criminal organizations in the world. What Jaggers didn't realize was that his decision had already set off a chain of events that would bring destruction not just to his doorstep, but to that of his close associates. This is the story of Peter Jaggers, a man who dared to betray the world's deadliest criminals. Born into the harsh reality of apartheid's aftermath, Peter Jaggers was no ordinary man. He was the architect of the Terrible Josters, a criminal empire that controlled over 10,000 members and stretched across the Western Cape like a dark, unbreakable web. From the narrow streets of Bontehovel to the rough edges of Kriefgat, his influence was undeniable. The Terrible Josters were not the usual street gang. They were international players trading in abalone, a seafood delicacy worth its weight in gold in Chinese markets. They were also involved in transnational smuggling activities. The murder of Ernest Lastig Solomon in 2020, a prominent and influential figure within the Terrible Josters, shifted the balance of power within the gang. With Solomon removed from the equation, Peter Jaggers seized the opportunity to consolidate his influence. His dominance over the gang became uncontested, and he rose to become one of the most feared and respected figures in Cape Town's criminal underworld. But Jaggers' operation wasn't built on fear alone. His reputation rested on something far more valuable: trust. He was a man who delivered on promises. This reliability earned him the attention of Colombia's most dangerous cartels. When they needed someone to manage the nearly impossible logistics of moving cocaine across oceans, they turned to Jaggers. He wasn't just a middleman. He was their most trusted operative, the one who could get the job done without fail. Standing beside Jaggers was William Billy Peterson, his right-hand man. Peterson was as sharp as he was loyal and understood the intricate and deadly world of international drug trafficking. Together, they made an untouchable force. But in the criminal world, nothing stays the same forever, and Jaggers soon found that out. On March 25th, 2024, under the cover of darkness, a shipment arrived on the remote shores of South Africa. It was no ordinary delivery. For months, the Colombian cartels had meticulously planned every detail of this operation. 700 kilograms of pure cocaine, valued at over 1 billion rand, which is about 50 million US dollars, were on their way from Colombia's coca fields to meet the insatiable demand of Eastern Europe's lucrative drug market. This was the kind of shipment that could make or break criminal empires, and Jaggers was their chosen middleman. The strategy for the drop was straightforward. A cargo ship would discreetly release specially designed containers into the vast waters of the Western Cape. These weren't ordinary shipping containers. They were crafted for stealth, equipped with GPS trackers, and camouflaged to resemble typical maritime cargo. The coordinates would be shared with Jaggers, who would then orchestrate the most delicate part of the operation, retrieving the shipment without raising any alarms. His men would then move it through a network of stash houses and corrupt connections that stretched across Cape Town. But on that March morning, something was different. As the GPS coordinates lit up on Jaggers' secure communication devices, he didn't prepare for a standard retrieval. Instead, he sent his most trusted men, not to collect the shipment, but to execute a tricky plan. Jaggers had decided that this shipment, this billion rand opportunity, would be his and his alone. On the morning of March 26, 2024, the Maritime Rescue Coordinating Center in South Africa received a desperate distress call. A fishing boat, stranded about 80 miles off the coast of Simon's Town, had run out of fuel and was adrift in the open sea. The urgency in the caller's voice left no room for delay. Within minutes, 2 rescue boats were dispatched, racing across the waves toward the stranded vessel. When the rescue team arrived, they found 6 men huddled together on the deck of a small, battered boat. They looked cold and exhausted, but unharmed. The men claimed they'd run out of fuel during a fishing trip. Relief washed over their faces as they were pulled to safety and brought back to shore. To the rescue team, it was just another day in office. To everyone watching, it was an ordinary story of fishermen saved from disaster. But only those 6 men and Jagger knew the truth. They weren't fishermen. They were part of a carefully planned scheme by Peter Jaggers. He had sent these men out to sea not to retrieve the drug shipment waiting in the waters, but to stage a show. Their job was simple: pretend to be stranded fishermen and get rescued. The goal was to create an elaborate cover story, one that would explain why the shipment never reached its intended destination. Jaggers wanted the Colombian cartel, the Bulgarian Mafia, and anyone else involved in that drug trade to believe the drugs had been lost to the sea. When the men reached shore, their faces showed relief, but their minds were focused. One of them slipped away and made a call to Jaggers. His message was brief but loaded with cryptic, "Send the second boat, everything's ready." And just like that, the second phase of the plan was set into motion. Another boat, staffed with trusted men, headed out to the same location. Unlike the first crew, their mission wasn't a performance. It was the real deal. They were there to retrieve the shipment and bring it back. What happened next remains a mystery. Did they find the drugs? Did they make it back safely? No one can say for sure, but rumors on the street were that Jaggers had succeeded. The shipment, instead of going to the Bulgarian Mafia, was sold off to another buyer. The cash, every last cent of it, went straight into Jaggers' pocket. But if Jaggers thought he'd gotten away clean, he was wrong. Thousands of miles away, both the Bulgarian Mafia and Colombian Cartel were about to discover they'd been played. The Bulgarian boss was the first to smell something was wrong. When the expected shipment failed to arrive, his patience evaporated. He picked up the phone and called the Colombian cartel leader. The Colombian leader, initially confident, listened in growing disbelief. Peter Jaggers had always been their most reliable middleman, always. How could everything go so wrong? The Colombian leader wasted no time. He dialed Jaggers, certain there was some misunderstanding. "What happened to the shipment?" he demanded. Jaggers, calm and collected, offered a simple explanation. "It got lost at sea. I couldn't recover it." But the excuse didn't sit well with the Colombian boss. This wasn't their first deal. They'd carried out operations far more complicated than this without a hitch. So why now? Why this shipment? His instincts screamed that something was off. Furious, he decided he wouldn't take Jaggers' word for it. For 2 months, nothing happened. No attacks, no threats, just silence. Jaggers, growing more confident, began to believe he'd pulled off the impossible. He'd stolen a shipment worth millions of dollars, deceived 2 of the most ruthless criminal organizations on the planet, and lived to tell the tale. But in the shadowy world of organized crime, silence is rarely a blessing. It's a storm brewing. On a humid June afternoon, Jaggers' phone buzzed. The voice on the other end was calm, almost friendly, with a faint Bulgarian accent. "Mr. Jaggers," the man began, "we need to discuss the shipment. We'd like to make a deal." Jaggers knew refusing wasn't an option. Declining would only raise suspicions, and he couldn't risk anyone digging too deep. So, against his better judgment, he agreed to meet in Johannesburg. What he didn't know was that the Bulgarians weren't interested in deals. They already knew the truth. So did the Colombians. And now, the 2 powerful organizations were working together, not to bargain, but to make Jaggers pay. On June 30th, 2024, Peter Jaggers and his trusted associate, William Peterson, made their way to Cape Town International Airport around 5 p.m. They were headed to Johannesburg, where a meeting awaited. As they arrived at Ord Tambo International Airport, 2 sharply dressed men were waiting for them. "Welcome to Johannesburg, gentlemen," one of them said, shaking Jaggers' hand firmly. The Bulgarians were nothing if not polite. Jaggers and Peterson were escorted to a hotel suite that dripped with luxury. Too much luxury. It felt like a stage, set for a show they didn't fully understand. The Bulgarians treated them like royalty, ensuring every detail of their stay was perfect. But beneath the surface, Jaggers couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The meeting with the Bulgarian Mafia was scheduled for July 3rd, 2024. When the clock struck 8 p.m., a sleek black car pulled up to the hotel entrance. The driver barely acknowledged them as they slid into the back seat. The car stopped in front of an unmarked building. The silence outside was deafening. Jaggers felt his chest tighten as the driver stepped out. Before he could process what was happening, the door opened. A man climbed into the back seat. He was Colombian. In his hand was a pistol. He tilted his head slightly, his eyes locking onto Jaggers. "Did you really think you could get away with it?" Jaggers didn't respond. He couldn't. His mind raced, searching for an escape, a way out. But there was none. The walls were closing in, and there was no negotiating his way out of this one. "Get out," the man ordered, motioning with the pistol toward the building. As Jaggers and Peterson were marched into the dark, empty space, the truth was undeniable. The game was over. The mastermind, who had outsmarted so many, had finally run out of moves. Back in Cape Town, the tension in the Jaggers household grew thicker with each passing day. Peter's wife, who had grown used to her husband's unpredictable life, couldn't shake the growing sense that something was terribly wrong. His usual disappearances were unsettling, but this time there was no response to any of her calls or texts. By July 5th, 2 days after Peter had left for a mysterious meeting in Johannesburg, worry turned to panic. Unable to ignore the fear any longer, she drove to the Bishop Lavis police station and filed a missing person report. As time went on, the unspoken truth was clear. Peter Jaggers wasn't just missing. He was in danger. Later that evening, back at home, her phone buzzed. The WhatsApp notification came from an unknown number. The message read, "Hey, we're not playing. Your husband's on the way to South America. You guys have 24 hours to return the stuff, or we will come after your families. We're not playing. We're fucking gangsters from Colombia. We're Cartel. We don't forgive you." Another voice note followed, and the message was just as scary. "Don't forget, time is running out. You've got 24 hours to give my stuff back." The cartel's ultimatum continued. "If I don't get my things, I will bomb your house. Anything related to you, I'll finish it. You think we're playing games? I'm not." Jaggers' representatives attempted to negotiate, asking if there was any other way to resolve the crisis. "Is there no alternative? No way we can work together to pay back what was lost?" they pleaded. The response came swiftly, sharp and final. "I've given you a chance. No more words. I'll show you today." Desperate, Jaggers' team continued to appeal for a solution, saying, "Please, think of a way we can resolve this. We'll work for you as long as you need us." But the Colombians' reply was a cold dismissal. "Don't contact me again. I've already given you a chance." After that, the communication ceased. Jaggers and his associate, William Peterson, vanished. No one heard from them again, and their whereabouts remained a mystery for 3 long months. Then, on October 11th, 2024, a passerby near the Clip River in Orangeville noticed something disturbing in the water. As he got closer, he paused, squinting, and realized it was a body. The police diving unit quickly arrived, uncovering a second body only a meter away. Both were in an advanced state of decomposition, their features obscured by the passage of time and the river's cruel grasp. By October 16th, the horrifying truth was confirmed. The families of Peter Jaggers and William Peterson identified the remains. Jaggers' wife was crushed when she saw the tattoos on his body, unmistakable marks of her husband. There was no denying it now. Peter was gone. His life had ended not with a triumph, but in brutal tragedy. The bodies showed clear signs of torture. Both men had been handcuffed and their feet bound with cable ties. One body bore the chilling tattoo International Crook, while the other had a cross surrounded by flames. It was clear. Peter Jaggers was among the dead. The Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation took over the case, piecing together the story of a life consumed by crime and betrayal. Jaggers, a man who had once navigated the dangerous underworld with sharp cunning, had finally paid the price for the web of deceit he wove. Peter's death didn't make headlines. There were no crowds at his funeral, no media frenzy. To some, he was a cautionary tale, proof that the criminal world doesn't forgive. To others, his death was simply the price of living a life built on betrayal. But to his wife and those who truly knew him, Peter Jaggers was more than just his choices. He was a husband, a father, and a man who ultimately became a victim of the ruthless world he once believed he could control. In the end, his story was proof of one harsh truth. In a life ruled by crime, the sword you live by is often the one that takes you down.